So all game twos of the round one NBA playoffs are officially over, and I can already tell this is going to be a great year for playoffs. I mean, a great majority of these series are tied at 1-1 now. You know, we've had some really good matchups, and yeah, so let's get into it. So the first game I'm going to talk about is the Heat and the Bucks. So the Bucks are just really playing well. They take a 2-0 series lead over the Heat. Obviously, the first game was an overtime thriller, but this game, it was a big blowout. 132-98 for the Bucks winning. And I mean, yeah, just simply a big blowout. The Heat did not look good. No one scored over 20 points. It was all 19 and below for scoring, which Dwayne Dedmon actually had the most points coming off the bench. The Bucks were just led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, 31 points. But he also got a lot of help from Bryn Forbes coming off the bench. The bench for the Bucks was actually pretty good. Chris Middleton had another good game. And I think a big theme in this playoff so far is bench. I mean, you look at a lot of these teams playing, and their bench is winning them the games. And I'm not saying the Bucks necessarily are in this situation, but their bench players are doing pretty good. So that's something to take note of. And yeah, Drew Holiday had 11. So yeah, they take a 2-0 lead, so pretty commanding lead. I don't really see the Bucks coming back, especially after this game. They took a big beating. So yeah. Next game was the Clippers and the Mavericks. Another 2-0 lead for Dallas. 127-121. The Clippers just don't look like they're together right now. Kawhi, I mean, I feel bad for him because Kawhi, played really well, and he had 41 points in 41 minutes. Paul George had 28 points as well, but I mean, besides those two guys, you really didn't have much scoring besides Reggie Jackson, who had 15 points. And, the Clippers just really couldn't outplay the Mavericks, who have Luka Doncic, who's 39 points, accompanied by Tim Hardaway Jr., 28 points, 20 for Porzingis, and 13 for Maxi Kleber. So, I mean, yeah, just a really good one for the Mavs. Similar to the series I mentioned before, the Heat-Bucks series, I don't see the Clippers coming back from this. I don't think it'll maybe necessarily be a sweep, but I don't really see the Clippers winning this series. I don't think many people do. So, yeah. The third game is another 2-0 series lead. So there's many ties and there's many 2-0 series leads, because obviously those are the only two outcomes that are possible so far. The Brooklyn Nets beat the Celtics 130-108, and Brooklyn once again played really well. I think many expected this. I don't think I'm saying anything new, because they're sharing the ball well. No one really had a astonishing amount of points for Brooklyn, but everyone had a good amount. Everyone in the starting lineup had double figures, 3 of which had more than 20 points. You had Shamet coming off the bench with 10 points, so I mean, that's just a really good lineup. 26 for Kevin Durant. And I mean, although, seeing a team like the Nets do well is a little bit, not the best feeling for people that aren't Nets fans, I'm still rooting for Kevin Durant, right? Kevin Durant is like a Warriors legend, even though he only played on us for like 3 years. He's still a Warriors legend because he won us 2 titles. So I'm 100% rooting for Kevin Durant. I don't know if I want to see the Nets win the title necessarily, but I really want Kevin Durant to thrive. Yeah, Joe Harris, 25 points. Blake Griffin, 11. Kyrie had 15. Harden had 20. I mean, that's pretty much expected. Celtics didn't have anyone over 20 points, just like the other game I mentioned. Marcus Smart had 19. He came closest. Kemba Walker had 17. Tatum only had 9, which really surprised me. So, yeah, I don't see the Celtics coming back from this. I think at the very most, it would go to 5 games. But I pretty much see this going to a sweep for Brooklyn. Next game, the Portland Trailblazers and the Nuggets. So this one is now a split, 1-1. Nuggets take a 128-109 victory. And I mean, I think this is going to be a good series as well. I could see this going to maybe 6, possibly 7 games. I'm not, obviously Denver's a great team. They have injuries. Portland's a great team too, but I don't know if they're in that elite level that some of these others are. For the Blazers, Damian Lillard. I mean, I wore his jersey the other day in a video, and he had 42 points in 42 minutes. That is great. He was accompanied by CJ McCollum, who had a 21-point game, 15 for Norman Powell. But besides that, they didn't have much help, and that's what they need. They need Covington to step up and get rebounds. They need Nurkic to step up, and he did get rebounds, but he didn't score much. And their bench didn't really do anything. I mean, 5 points for Carmelo, 4 for Cantor, and I mean, besides that, really nothing. So they really have to step up if they want to win the series, because they played really well in the first game. But in the second game, 128 to 109. For the Nuggets, 38 for Jokic, obviously an MVP candidate, 12 for Campazzo, 12 for Monte Morris. Their bench did pretty good too. 15 for Millsap, 18 for Michael Porter Jr., 13 for Aaron Gordon. So besides Jokic, no one had 20 or more points, but still, that's all you need. I mean, you need an MVP candidate and then guys helping out. So that's really helpful for him. And yeah, Nuggets take that. Next game is the Wizards versus Sixers, and I think most people expected this, a big Sixers victory over the Wizards. They take a 2-0 series lead, and I mean, I pretty much can guarantee this is going to be a sweep. The Wizards are a good team, don't get me wrong, but no one saw them getting into the playoffs, say, a couple months ago, and I think they have a great story. I mean, they made the playoffs when everybody doubted them, but I just don't think they're anything close to being as good as the Sixers, who also have a MVP candidate, Joel Embiid. Ben Simmons had 22, Embiid had 22 as well, 19 for Tobias Harris. Not as good as a performance for some of these guys, but still, I mean, you're playing a team that didn't break 100, so don't necessarily need all that firepower. 33 for Bradley Beal, he played great, and I honestly kind of feel bad that, he's losing these games when, he's playing really, really well, but unfortunately, that's just what happened. Westbrook had 10 points. He had a double-double, 11 for Hachimura, 10 for Ish Smith, and 11 for Gafford. But, it is what it is. I don't really see the Wizards winning a game in this. They lost by 25. So, yeah, that's that. 120 to 95. Philadelphia takes a 2-0 series lead over the Wizards. So, just 3 more games now. The Lakers beat the Suns. And I see this game, I think, honestly, this could go to 6 or 7 games. I think 7 is a strong possibility. The Lakers won by 7 points, 109-102. So just to put that in perspective, the Suns took game 1, and they won 99-90. So a 9-point victory for them in the first game. But this was a good game. I mean, it really could have gone either way, I think. But, the Lakers just came out in front. It was pretty equally matched all the way through, but the Lakers had a slightly better first quarter. But, I mean, every other quarter was pretty equal. 30 points apiece in the fourth, 26 for the Lakers, and 25 for the Suns in the third. Each team had 23 in the second. Lakers outscored them by 6 in the first. So, I mean, this is a really good matchup, to say the least. 34 for Davis, Anthony Davis, that is. 23 for LeBron, 15 for Drummond, 24 for Schroeder. Their bench didn't really contribute that much, but you don't need to contribute when you have a starting lineup as good as that. Even though the Lakers, I don't really know if they're going to be a finals contender, but whatever. It's too early to tell anyways. For the Suns, I mean, Chris Paul, he's kind of the reason that, not the reason they lost this game, but if he played better, they would have won. He only had 6 points. Whereas, Cameron Payne had 19 coming off the bench. Devin Booker had 31, great, game for him. 22 for Ayton. But yeah, they just needed some of their stars to step up. It's all right. I mean, I don't think anyone expected this to be any sort of, blowout. And I think the Lakers were destined to win this. So yeah, 109-102 series is now tied. The Knicks, Hawks. Now this, I think this is going to be a great series too. You have two teams kind of in the middle, of like the playoff standings. Like they're not the best teams, but they're definitely not the worst teams. And the Knicks actually tied up the series 101-92. Now obviously Trae Young kind of hated in New York now, which is kind of funny. He came in there and he's just getting booed. And I mean, yeah. And I kind of see Trae Young as kind of like a Steph Curry. Obviously not half as good as Steph Curry, but he's kind of in the same situation. He's got a very decent team, but he doesn't have a great team around him to necessarily carry him to, or like help him win games, right? So he took the first game, obviously. He had 30 points this game, but I think, it's just the Hawks have to step up. 18 for Bogdanovic, which I think really helped. 18 for DeAndre Hunter, 10 for Kevin Huerter. But I mean, yeah, the Hawks, it just wasn't necessarily the best game for them. Their fourth quarter was pretty bad, and their third quarter, they played good in the first half. They were leading for a good majority of this game. Randall had 15 for Bullock. RJ Barrett, 13, 26 for Derrick Rose coming off the bench, and 11 for Alec Burks. That Knicks bench is great. I mean, in the first game, they really helped out. Despite them losing, it was a close one. But they took the second game of the series, 101-92. And I expect this to be a great series. I'm predicting 6 or 7 games, probably 6 in reality. But, I mean, still, really good game for both sides. But like I said, the Hawks kind of failed to capitalize in that second half. In the final game, which I think is also a pretty interesting series because it's the 1 seed versus the 8 seed, and it just ended pretty recently. The Memphis Grizzlies played the Jazz, and the Jazz scored a lot, 141-129. And I mean, I think, the first game was definitely really interesting, but I don't think the first game necessarily kind of expresses how the entire series will go. I think definitely the Jazz are the better team, but the Grizzlies, they don't go down without a fight, which, I mean, despite them beating the Warriors, I really admire that. Because, you look at this game, and I mean, the Grizzlies really struggled in the first half. They were outscored a lot. I mean, they scored 27 points in the first and second quarters, each time they scored. So that would have been 54 points heading into halftime, while the Jazz scored 36 and 38. So, I mean, that's over 70 points right there. But in the third quarter, the Grizzlies played really good. And I mean, I think if they had an even better fourth quarter, then they probably would have won this game. They lost by 12 points. I don't know if they would have won it. Maybe it would have been a closer game. But, you look at the scoring. Ja Morant is unhuman right now. I mean, 47 points for Morant. He beat the Warriors, but I got to show some respect. 47 points, and he's a young player. I think the sky's the limit for this guy. 23 for Dylan Brooks, who's also been really good in the playoffs so far, and the play-in. 18 for Valanciunas, 16 for Jaren Jackson, 11 for Kyle Anderson, and despite the great effort for the Grizzlies and, obviously Morant's 47 points, they were simply outmatched. Obviously, you got a great bench from the Jazz because you have 2 Six-Man of the Year candidates. You have Joe Ingles, who had 14 points. You had Jordan Clarkson, who had 16. I mean, that's 30 points off the bench between 2 guys right there. And then you have, obviously, the great starting lineup. Donovan Mitchell was in the lineup, and he did great. He had 25 points, 20 for Conley, 21 for Gobert, 18 for Bogdanovich, and 14 for Royce O'Neal. So, I mean, yeah, you got to just make sure you can get those starters kind of, die down a little bit so you can actually, experience the bench more and, kind of play a much, better game like that. So I think the Grizzlies, they got to improve in the first half, but I think if they played with the same intensity that they did in the second half, they could have won this game. So that'll do it, guys, for every NBA playoff game too. So in round 1. So let me know your thoughts, and yeah, see you guys in the next one.